Begin the current Daf Mesechta Bava Metzia Daf Tzadik Vav. Begin 20 lines down at the top of the Yamid, where the Gemara is in the middle of explaining this halacha of the Dal Shaimin. As we spoke about these Prakim, Aseiches apar, Shoyles apar, we're discussing regarding those are two types of the four Shaimin, and regarding the Shoyl, the Mishnah told us that his liability is for everything, even for Einstein, but there's a unique Gezeres HaKasev, there's a Patur, there's an exemption of Bebailim. If you are the owner is working for you at the time of the loan, so then you're going to be exempt. Now the Gemara is going to further qualify this halacha of shayil, and as that relates to the patur of bailim. Turn to today's daf throughout the entire world. So we discuss in today's daf are, like we said, shayil chav ba'insin. Then the reason what was given is because kala na shaloi, or like the Gemara says, reiva na shaloi. The question is, what type of benefit does the shayil have to qualify him as a shayil to be chayv and einzin? The halach of shayla b'bailim pater, that we said that if you're borrowing something and at the same time you have the owner doing a service for you, you're going to be pater. The Gemara qualifies that. Who's the bailim? And in that discussion comes up the question of nichsi malug. The wife, when she comes into the marriage, there's two types of basic assets: nichsi tzarm barzel, which is iron sheep, which the husband takes full responsibility, and nichsi malug is considered the wife's property, but the husband gets the payers, gets the utility. So the question that becomes is, do we say kinyan payers kinyan guf? Do we say that the fact that the husband gets the utility, it's like he owns it? And hence the question is going to be, who is the bailim to have the halacha of shayil, the have it bebailim, to say that you'd be pater? Is the wife the bailim or is the husband the bailim? Question is regarding this tour of bailim. And also the Gemara discussed regarding shluch shalom kamaisai. Do we say that also makes it like it's the bailim when he sends a shliach to say that when he's lending something to someone, oh well, if you have your agent, he's also like an extension of you, and now you have the patur of the bailim. And as the Gemara discusses, do we say bal ben nichsi ishte, that the husband and his wife assets shoyl hava or seicher hava? What is he considered? Like as if he's borrowing his wife's stuff? Is he like a renter? And the Gemara says that ultimately, a case of when you're going to say a bal ben nichsi ishtoi, the husband and his wife's assets would be considered a she'ela bebailim, which is that what's the case that we're even talking about? The Gemara is going to try to figure out, because seemingly the husband is always considered she'ela bebailim, even if he would be a shayil, because the wife is always in service of the husband. So even if he's like a shayil on her assets, he should be pater. But the Gemara is going to explain the case actually talking about haseicha par mechavei. We had this machlekes in the previous daf. If someone rents a cow from his friend, Vishilacha, then the renter lends it to someone else, Umesa Gedarka, then it dies the normal way, which a shayil is chayiv, a seicher is pater. What do you do in that type of situation? Do you say the last guy pays it to the seicher, and the seicher is pater from the guy he rented it from? Or do you say, no, the shayil owns it to the original guy? That's actually going to be the case that we're going to discuss of the husband and his wife, when she actually rented from someone else, and he's quote-unquote a shayil from her. The question would be, what do we do with the husband? Does he owe it to the original person that the wife rented it from or not? And then finally, the Gemara discussed regarding Bal ben Nichse Ishte Mimol, if the wife inherited something of hektish, and then it automatically gets transferred to the husband, the Gemara assumes that's considered an act of me'ilah, misappropriation, because it's being transferred to the husband. The question would be, who's committing the me'ilah when he marries her? Is it the husband? Is it the wife? Is it the bezdin? That's going to be the Gemara's final discussion. So begin the current Daf Tzadik Vav, 20 lines down at the top of the Yabed, where it has a small little base over there. It says the Gemara, Bayram Bachama. As we had said in the Mishnah, Shoyl is chayv ba'insin. One who borrows an item is liable even for an unavoidable loss. The question is, the Gemara has some interesting questions. Shalo l'rava. If the man borrowed the animal, that he himself wants to sodomize the animal, what's the halacha? Would that qualify for the halacha of shayil to be chayv and einzin or not? What's the question? Why would you think not? So the Gemara explains. Do you say kedeshayli in shebi'inan that you need to have that the halacha of shayil applies the way people normally borrow items? People generally don't borrow animals, monetary items for this purpose, and hence it wouldn't be qualified as your classic shayil in the Torah, and therefore you actually would be pater from einzin. Oidamano. Time am I? What's the reason that you're chayiv ha'einzin? It's not because that's a normal way of shayil. It's mishum hana. It's because of benefit. V'hainami ha'isle'ana. This guy who's using the animal for the purpose of the sodomy is having benefit, and hence this would be considered as the halacha of shal b'chayv and einzin. That's one question. The Gemara has another question. Shala liroyis ba. What happened if, and this is not a new thing that people have where they stage certain homes or they do certain things for things to appear a certain way, a guy wants to look like a distinguished, wealthy individual. The reason for that is because he doesn't want the wealthy people that loan or give on credit to refrain from him, because you see that the guy lost his car, lost his Rolex, lost whatever, so he's borrowed something to appear wealthy. Ma, what's the halacha? Would that also give him the halacha as a shell? What's the question? So the Gemara explains that, do you say mamayna be'inan vo'ika? In other words, the way Taisa explains that you need to have that he's lending him money, and he's lending him a monetary item. Moreover, that he's having actual benefit from the thing itself. Maybe no. You need to have benefit from the thing itself, from, let's say, the animal. Here, Valeka, you're not having benefit from the thing itself that you're borrowing. It's a secondary benefit. It's something that now that people see you, you appear wealthy, so that's why you're borrowing it. But that's not the actual benefit from the thing itself. Maybe that wouldn't qualify for the halacha of shayil to be chayv and einzin. Again, you see that the Gemara is trying to fine-tune and get the principle that is why the Torah says a shayil is chayv and einzin. Maybe these things that are not like your regular type of shayil would not qualify. Question number 3 is shayil lasses b'pachas mepruta mahu. What's the halacha if, let's say, you borrowed an item because you needed to have a benefit from it that's worth less than the pruta? So what's the question? So on the one hand, you need to borrow a monetary item, and you are, so therefore you'd be chayiv. Maybe no, as we know throughout many halachas, less than a pruta's worth is not significant, and hence it wouldn't qualify for the halacha of a shayil to be chayiv and einzin. Question number 4. Says the Gemara, if you're going to say that less than a pruta, you're right, it's insignificant. We don't consider that as a monetary entity, and therefore you wouldn't be chayiv the halachas of a shayil. What's the halacha in the next case? Shol shtei paris. Let's say you borrow 2 cows. Lasman pruta mahu. The sum total of the 2 cows will be a pruta's worth. What's the question? So the Gemara explains. Mirmin, do we say zilbasa shoyulu mashal v'ika? You go after the parties, the borrower and the lender, and ultimately between them there's a transaction of a pruta's worth that's happening, and hence you would be chayiv for einzin. No, zilbasa paris. You go after the product, which is the cows, and each and every one does not have a loan of a pruta's worth, and therefore you'd be patur from einzin. So the Gemara continues now on a different lens, that of questions relating to ba'al avimai, which we said those are the 2 halachas we spoke of that are unique to the halacha of a shayil. The stringency of a shayil is that it's chayiv ba'einzin, which we wanted to know, would these cases also be chayiv ba'einzin? Do you say that it's lacking money? Do you lacking benefit? It's lacking the way people usually borrow things? Those are the questions we asked. Now we want to know on the patur of ba'al of imay. There's a unique zeres hakasa that says that if you have the owner with you at the time when you borrowed it, you're going to be patur. So it says the Gemara the following question. Shol mishutfen. If someone borrowed a cow that's owned by partners, Reuben and Shimon, v'nishaloi echad mehen, and he has one of the owners of the cows who was lent to him in a service that he needed. When he borrowed the cow, Reuven was helping him mow his lawn. Ma, what's the halacha? So what's the question? So the Gemara explains. Do you say kuloi ba'alav be'inon? You need all of the owner. Ba'alav imay means the entire owner. Well, like you don't have that. I didn't know. Maybe not. Mahu palga didei mi mifter. But from the half of that one owner, you'd be exempt from his half. Which actually, Taisa de Masal Initial says he wonders why. Why would you say, if you say when all the Ba'al Madeh, you're part from everything, so now when you have half, you should be part from half. As he brings the Gemara Meruba and Baba Kama, Chamishi Bakar, Chamishi Chatzoi Bakar. Why wouldn't you say half like you say over there, you say half? Says Taisa, no, over there it's a svara that you have to pay according to what you stole. So, okay, fine, so if it's half, then it'll be half. But over here, the Allah of Sheil Babayim, there's no svara to be part. It's a huge chiddush. So that's what the Talmudic dictum, Ein L'chabai, Ein L'chadusha. It's a novelty. The Torah says you're exempt. Why would you be exempt? You're sure you get all the and punk the guy happened. Forget, you should almost be more chayiv than when the guy's working. He not only lent you something, but he's also doing work for you, and now you're patur. So the Ksesa Kasa says Taisus, so therefore we're not assuming that when the guy has one of the owners, which is half, you'll be put on that half. That's what the Gemara doesn't answer the question based on, like we find in Meruba, that, okay, half, at least half. No, maybe you would be still chayiv because it has to be entirely balavima. Now, a similar question, says the Gemara, shutfin sheshalu, the other way around now. What happens if partners borrowed a cow to plow their shared property? Now, the one owner of the cow got borrowed le'echad mehem, to one of them, which as Rashi points out, obviously to do a work that's not on a different land, that's not from the partnership. What's the halacha? So what's the question? So the Gemara explains. Do you say kule shoyel bi'inan? You need to have that the owner of the animal is lent out to the entire borrower of his cow, like you don't have because only one of the two borrowers is he working for? Maybe no, but he palga the shaili mias mifter. The two partners that borrowed the cow, the one borrower that he did work for should be potter because he has balavima. A similar question: shol mehoisha. If let's say somebody borrowed from a woman a cow that's nichse melug, as we described beforehand, that nichse melug are properties that are owned by the woman, but the husband gets the utility. So someone borrowed the cow from the woman's nichse melug, the initial baala, and the woman's husband was asked to help out for the work of the borrower, or the other way around. Isha shashala, a woman borrowed to plow her karke melug, it's her property, but Venishal, and then the owner was lent out lebal to the husband to do his own work. What's the halacha? So what's the question? So really both these questions come down to the principle of kinyan peiris. The husband who eats the peiris melug, he gets the produce, he has the utility of the property. Do you say that's kikinyan haguf dami? It's as if he's the Baal, whether it be the Shayl case or whether it be the Mashal case, either one. Like it's as if the cow or the karka, which we had two opposite cases, would be his or not. So that would be important to know when he's being lent out. Is he the Bailim to say that then the other person, let's say, has the Batura of Balav Imoy or not? Which, Tyson the Maskal Shal, he wonders on this question. He says, how could you even have a case of Shalom and the Isha? He says, what power does the woman have to lend out Nechse Melug? When the peiris goes to the husband has the power to lend it without her rishos. She cannot lend it out at all. So why even talk about a case of borrowing from the woman?
If she does it anyway.
It doesn't work. If you don't have the rights, it doesn't work. So on that says Taisus, you could say that the truth is the husband can't lend it out or sell the peiris Nechse Melug without her permission. Like the Gemara says in Ksubis, has to be Rav Chadabesa, whatever his permission is for that. So that's what it means. Shalom and Isha means with her permission. Or actually, Taisa says a very different case. He says the case is not borrowing from the woman and then having the husband work for you. It's you borrowed from the husband the nichse melug which belonged to the woman. So according to Taisa, you're actually borrowing from the husband and you're using the husband. But the question would still apply because ultimately, do you consider him the bailim, even though he's the one who lends it out? Is he the bailim or not? Another similar question, says the Gemara, is Omar le Ravin le Ravashi. If someone says to his agent, say v'hishoili, do me a favor, go ahead and lend yourself out for me in parasi with my cow that I'm lending this guy. What's the halacha? So the Gemara explains the question. Baal of mamash be'ina v'leka. Do you need literally the owner to go and work for the borrower at the same time, and you don't have that? I didn't know the famous Talmudic principle: shalucha shalodin kamaisai. The agent of a person is like himself, the ikka, and you have that, and therefore you would have the B'tur Baal of Ima. So many of these questions, all the previous questions, the Gemara doesn't answer. The last two questions, the Gemara says, Amli Ravacha Bereder of Avila Ravashi. He says, Baal, regarding the second to the last question, regarding a husband, as we spoke about kinyan peiris that the husband has, that's a plukta de Yechon v'Rish Lakish, which Taisa points out, although it seems to be a machlekes tanoim earlier, Taisa says, no, those cases wouldn't be a proof, but that you have this machlekes de Yechon v'Rish Lakish, of Amiram, and Shliach, the halacha of, if you say kamaisai or not, is plukta de Rabbi Yonasan v'Rabbi Yosha. As the Gemara explains, where we find this machlekes prior. Baal plukta b'yich meshlakish, the husband is a machlekes b'yich meshlakish, like we learned. Hamoicher sadeu l'chaveiru lepeirus. If someone sells his field to his friend only for the peiros, meaning that the buyer could eat the produce for the next 2-3 years, and then it goes back to the owner. So as machlekes Rabbi Yechon Shlakish, what do you do in that type of situation? Rabbi Yechon Omer, he says that maybe you bring bikurim, which are the first fruits of the 7 things that the Eretz Yisrael is praised with, and you recite the parsha of Arami Ibed Av in that whole parsha. Now, in that parsha, what's unique about this is you say the words Hine hevesi es reishes priadam asher nosatali, that you gave me, which that means to say that you own the property. You could only say the parsha bikurim if it's yours. Rechon says, yeah, you bring the bikurim and you recite the parsha. Shlokishami says, no, maybe in the you could bring the bikurim, but you cannot say the parsha. So the Gemara explains, this is the principle that they're disagreeing about. Rabbi Yechon says, maybe you bring the bikurim and you recite the parsha because kinyi peiros kinyi guf dami. You own the peiros for the next 2-3 years. That means you own the property. You could say, Hadam asher nosatali. This is my land. So therefore you could recite the parsha. But Shlokishami says, no, maybe in the kaira you could bring it, but you cannot recite the parsha because kinyi peiros left kinyi guf dami. Owning the peiros is not like you own the property. And therefore you cannot say the parsha because it's not Hadam asher nosatali. Well, that's the same thing we're discussing over here with the husband and the wife. With the peiros and nechsim milug, the para or the karka, depends if he's the lender or the borrower. Either way, when you have the husband, that is what the question would hinge on. If you say that the kinyan peiros of the husband is kikinya guf or not, that would be depending if you can have the patur of bal of imoy or not. Now, regarding the last case of shliach of the agent, that's a pluk to Rabbi Yonasan and Rabbi Yosha, because the Tanya learned in the Brisa. Someone says to a caretaker, a guy was traveling overseas, so he appointed a caretaker over his assets to take care of his wife and his children. So he said to the apotropos, any vow that my wife's going to take, from now up until I come back from the place where I'm going to, I want you to nullify her vow. And so the caretaker, the live-in, that's it, goes and nullifies her vows. Yochel, you mufachim, says the Brisa, you would think, okay, fine, that was the husband asked, and he appointed the caretaker to do that, and he did it, it would be nullified. Tamalim, no, it says in the pasuk, Ishi kemena, the Ishi yifrena, her husband has to substantiate, her husband has to nullify it. The Rabbi Yosha, and therefore the caretaker is not qualified to nullify it. He says, no, it's not true. We find throughout the Torah, the agent of a person is like himself. This is Ishi Gemenda, this is Ishi Yeferena. So we see that if a shliach is kamaisai or not, there's a machlekes Rabbi Yonasan and Rabbi Yosha, and that would be the same thing over here when the man said, here, I'm lending my cow to this guy, you go represent me and work for him, be my shliach. If that's going to be balavima or not, would be dependent on this machlekes Rabbi Yonasan and Rabbi Yosha, which Taisa asks. He says, Amad Nazach. He says, how can you compare Sheila B'Bailam to the halach of Nadarim? Rabbi Yosha has a drasha why it's not shlichut kamaisai, and generally doesn't disagree. He also holds shlichut shem kamaisai. He says here you have ishi kamen of ishi v'rena. How are you saying that by balavimai you wouldn't say balavimai that you everyone agrees shlichut shem kamaisai? Says Tais says no. The reason Rabbi Yosha over there is because it says 2 times the word isha. Isha yikamen of isha v'rena. This redundancy excludes a shliach. He also says ba'olav 2 times, and therefore would have the same halacha. Or another person says the terminology of ba'olav or ishus sounds like dafka him and not a shliach, and therefore it would be the same principle. And therefore the Gemara is comparing it to the machlekes Rabbi Yonasan and Rabbi Yosha. But you're right, it wouldn't be global. It would be specifically in the context of these 2 places where we don't say shluch Hashem kamaisai. And again, that's the machlekes Rabbi Yonasan and Rabbi Yosha, which would be the same thing over here. We're going to ba'olav imay. Now, continue on this theme of what we just said regarding the shliach, the Gemara has a related question. Amalei Rav Ilish l'Rava says, if someone tells his Eved Kanani, his slave, Tzevi sholim parasi, I'm lending my cow to my neighbor Jacob, do me a favor, I want you to also go do work for him, which is the halacha of the Mao. The Gemara wants to know, what's the halacha? Would you qualify ba'olav imay with the Eved? So the Gemara explains first to qualify the question that you could ask it according to either one of the number we just said. You could ask it according to the one that said shlucha shalab kamoisai. It would still be a valid question, even though we just said that an agent is like yourself. And you could ask the question also according to the one that says that an agent is not like yourself, as the Gemara explains now. Either one. You could ask the question, even though we just said that's it. Yeah, agent is like yourself. So yeah, you send your evidence should be like yourself. No, because you could say Hanamili. When did we say this? By a shliach, the bar mitzvah, who someone that is also commanded in mitzvahs like yourself, another yid. He is someone that if you send him, it'll be the Torah balavim. It's like you went yourself. But abel eved the lav bar mitzvah, a slave who's not someone that's obligated in all the mitzvahs like a regular Jew. Loi, because as Rashi explains, we learned this on das ayin alf amabeis. Shlich is learned from the halacha of Truma, where it says instead of atem, it says gam atem, which includes your shliach, which that means it has to be similar to the meshaleach, which the same halachas have to apply. Here, this eved does not have the same halacha of the shayil or the mashal, where he doesn't have anything without his master, and therefore maybe we would say that it would not qualify with halacha of balavimai. Maybe no. I could ask the question the other way too. I could say even according to one that hold generally the agent is not like yourself. That's by an agent, because we said it says balav like Taisa says, or ishas or whatever, or the redundancy, but that's an agent. Eved is actually stronger because that's another Talmudic principle of yad eved kiyad rabbi damya. The slave the hand of a slave is like the hand of the master. You're literally like him himself. He has no zich at all. And shliach is like kamoisle, but he has his own essence. He has his own. Eved is like yourself. And if you send the eved, maybe it would be like yourself. So you could ask the question according to either option. On that Omalei, he answered to Rav Elish, Mistabet logical yad eved yad Rabbi Damya. Yes, the hand of a slave is like the hand of the master, and therefore it would be considered as balavimai if you send your eved together when you're lending out the cow, and that guy will be pater from whatever happens to that cow. Now, continuing on the theme that we had started off with, all these questions with Bay Ram Bachama. So the Gemara says the following question: Baal benichse ishtoi, a husband in his wife's assets, as we continue to Amid Beis. Shoyl hava? Do we consider the husband as a bara? Now, Rashi explains that the Gemara assumes that the question is regarding the liability of if, let's say, any oinus happens to the animals of the nichsi melug, that's the wives, which the husband is doing work with, because we said the husband has rights for the utility of the thing. Do we consider the husband as a shoyl, which in a way you would think definitely would qualify the husband as a shoyl, because kol ano shaloi, he's getting all the benefit. He just gets to utilize the wife's stuff. Or actually, would we say that he's like a renter? As we'll explain shortly, that in a way he is like a renter because he owes her certain things for the ability to have the payers. So which one is the husband? A shayil or a seicher, which obviously have different halachas. Some Rabbi says, Lafum churfa, because he's so quick and so sharp, shabeshta, he made a mistake. That's how people that are very quick and sharp, they're very quick and whatever, but they don't think things through all the way. And he made a mistake because the question is really a moot point. Because manavshach, either way you look at it, the question is irrelevant. If he's a borrower, it's still considered borrowing with the owner with you. Because like Rashi's words are, she's always doing work for him. She's already lent out to him. The moment they get married, she's already doing work for him. So even if he's, so to speak, a borrower for the assets of her nichsi melug, it's ba'alavimai. She can be pater anyway. And if he's a renter, that's also considered renting bebailim. So either way, you're going to be pater. It's irrelevant. So the Gemara says, when did he ask the question? Is the following case. It's talking about where the agar mina para. This man was not married to this woman. They lived across the street. He's single, she's single. He rented from her a cow. V'hadunas, then he married her. That was his question. Now that he's married to her, is he a borrower or is he a renter as a husband who gets the utility of the nichsi milog? So the Gemara explains the question. Do you say shoyl hava the moment he gets married, he's considered a borrower? So therefore, v'asya sheila b'bailam. Now the new title of a borrower that he has with the owner working for him would be mafkas chira shalei b'bailam. It would remove the prior renter status that he had, which was without the owner, because the wife that wasn't his wife, then she wasn't working for him, and therefore he would be patur because now it takes on a new status of sheila b'bailam. I didn't know. Seicher. You say that the husband, when in the wife's nechsim elug is a seicher. Then maschir kedekayma kayma. So then the rental remains as it was, and you didn't have any new transaction to become a new seicher. So the original schirus was without balav imoy. So there would be chayiv. So that's very critical now to how to qualify if he's a shayil or a seicher. So the Gemara answers and says, well, what are you talking about? Maishno, what's the difference? Why? Because the ishayil have if he's a borrower, which you're telling me that the new borrower title that he gets is with the wife working for him, is mafkas chirish lebebailam, removes the original rental that he had without the bailam. The Gemara, as Taisa points out, doesn't think it's any different, which you might entertain to say, but the Gemara says clearly, iseicher namahab, it doesn't make a difference. If he's still considered a renter in the wife's nechsim elug, Teisus chichus b'bailam, that's also a new thing. Let the fact that he's considered a renter with the bailam, meaning the wife working for him, should remove the schir shlei b'bailam, as Teisus explicitly says, which you would think as a svara, but Teisus says, in their masl iseicher, he says the Gemara does not consider it logical to say that dafka she'ela shahisav l'schayiv ba'intzim afkiyas schir shemetchila, which you, again, like you could think to say, what do you mean? If you were a seicher and you are a seicher, so nothing new is happening. So therefore, you might say that you should be chayiv if something happens, because that wasn't mabailam. Versus the shoyl is a new thing, so that's a new transaction. So that's mabailam. But Taisus Bavarans, and he says he doesn't explain why. Just says the Gemara it's lemistabele. The Gemara doesn't understand it to be any different, even though it's same schirus. But the Gemara understands it. Oh, but it's a naya schirus. The nice schirus, those on schir b'bayim, should remove the alta schirus of schir shlei b'bayim. So anyway, you should be part of it. The Gemara says it's still a moot point. It doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make sense that this would be his question. Ella rather says the Gemara, must be the case the Rambam was asking was a different case. What's the case? This woman rented a cow from somebody else. Then, v'hadr nasva. This man, a different man, married her. Now, the moment he gets married, he gets rights in the cow to use it all the days of the lease. She leased the cow for a period of 10 years. So, the husband now gets to use whatever the chasam she has, leishtamish ba, for the peiris, for the utility. The question is like this: do we consider it as if the husband is borrowing it from her, and therefore this would qualify to be the case that we spoke about in the previous Mishnah on the V'lamahema base, which is she rented a cow from someone else. She then went and lent it to someone else. This is called Seicher Par Mechaveroi, Veshila Acher, and then the animal died by the shayl, which Machlik is Rabban Rabbi Yisi and Perkam Mafkid. The Rabbanan say that the Seicher swears to the renter, swears to the owner who leased out the cow, say, look, Mesa Kedarka died a normal way, which is Oinus. I, who is the renter, I'm Pater. Now, the one that this renter lent it to, who's a shayl, well, Oinus, he has to pay, and he pays it to the Seicher. So the Seicher actually walks out making money off the deal, because he's Pater to the masker, and yet the shayl is chayav to him. Rabbi Yossi says, what? Right, so we spoke about this. What we spoke about. That's the machlekes over there. And Rabbi Yossi says, no, ain't no demaiserai. And he says, no, the cow goes back to the original owners. That was the machlekes we mentioned on Daf Lamed Hey. So now the Gemara explains, if this is the case, the question is like this: V'ali b'de Rabbanon, that according to the Rabbanon, the army that they say shoyl mishalm l'seicher, that the borrower pays to the seicher, meaning the shoyl only deals with the one who lent it to him, not with the original owners who leased it out to the one who lent it to him. Okay, then you're right. Then we don't have a question at all, because even if the husband is a shoyl, since he has to pay to her, he's patur any way you look at it.
So she makes the shiur to the original owner? he does.
Yeah, she would swear. She would swear that
She would.
that it died in the normal way.
He doesn't have to make it.
So he admitting it died. The question is, a shayl is chayv in einsin. The question is, who does he pay to? That's the main point. So according to the Chacham, it says that he pays it to the one who lent it to him. So in this case of the husband, either way, whether he's a shayl or a seicher, he's going to be pater, because the vade shayla b'baylim he. Because for sure that qualifies for borrowing something with the owner working for you, because he borrowed from the wife, he owes to the wife, according to the Chachamim, and therefore, since the wife has lent him the moment he gets married, so he's going to be pater. The question is only valid on Libed Rabbi Yesi. Meaning this, that you want to know if the husband is a shoyl or a seicher would be relevant only according to Rabbi Yesi. Because the Amar, what did Rabbi Yesi say? He says, no, what are you talking about? The guy's going to make money, the seicher's going to make money off the shoyl? No. The cow has to go back, since it ultimately wasn't oinus and the shoyl's chayv oinsin, he has to pay it back to the original owners, the original bailam. Oh, well now, his she'ela was not b'balam. You didn't have balavimai, because the bailam is not his wife who quote unquote lent it to him. You see from Rabbi Yisi that you have to pay it back. Who's the real bailam? The original owners. Oh, they weren't working for you. Oh, now it's relevant. What's the halachic status of the husband? Do we say shoyl hava, that the husband is considered as a borrower from his wife, and hence, if it dies in the normal way, a shoyl is chayv ben einsin, and he would have to pay it to the original bailim. Maybe the husband is not a borrower; he's a renter from his wife, and therefore he's pater from einsin, just like his wife is pater. Now, Rashi points out, why would you say the husband is not a shoyl? Doesn't he get kala no shaloi? What's the schirus? No, because chacham or mesakin, what's called pirkuna tachas peidoiseha. If the woman, lo yaleinu, we know of such a concept today's time, if she's taken captive, there's halacha that because the husband gets the peiris of har nechsimilug, the halacha is he's required, he's mandated to do pirkaina, to redeem her. And he has to go with the placards and say, bring them home now. He has to do whatever it takes to bring her back. So therefore, it's not kol noshlo. It's like a schir. He's paying this currency here for his peiris. So that's the question: is the husband a shoyl or a seicher that would be relevant for this case that we're describing? Of she rented a cow from somewhere else. He then married her. Then the animal died in the normal way. Would the husband be pater because of the fact? Meaning, and again, the question is only according to Rabbi Yesi. According to Cham Fashtetzach, you're going to be pater because I don't give you a shayla secher. It's bebal avima because the bal for you that's relevant, who you pay to, is the wife, and for her, you're always going to have bal avima. The question is only according to Rabbi Yesi, who says the payment has to go to the original owner. So then that's not bal avima. Then the question would be relevant: are you a shayla or a secher? If you're a shayla, you can be chayev because you're chayev anayinsin. If you're a secher, you can be pater. That's the Gemara's question. But what status do you? So what? How do you qualify him? What is he? It's not. He doesn't own it. So this that he's using it. Is he borrowing it? Is he, so to speak, renting it? Yeah. How would the chachamim who were misakin this qualify this transaction? Right, I understand. But when you have a seicher who rents, who has responsibility, now when they lend it to someone else. But why wouldn't he be, let's say, a shayl? How is it different than the shayl? Shayl is like, it's yours, but I want to use it. What's he doing then? How's he using it? What's the entitlement qualified as? That's what I'm saying. The entitlement has to be qualified. A shayl is also entitled. I borrowed. A sheikh is also entitled because he paid. But the husband's also paying for it. Let's say if you go with that side of a sheikh, but he has to redeem her now. There is a transaction over here. I have to redeem you now. No, the chacham or misakin. It's not a deraisa. Chacham or misakin that the husband gets the peiris. So now that you now what status did they give you? That's really what the Gemara's question is. It you have to have some title because who are you? A shayl is a shayl. A seicher is a seicher. You have some type of rights over here.
turned to her, it was a damaged field.
That if he forgets.
The field gets ruined, right? He goes down in value.
That he didn't do anything for that, the flooding. That's not even right, but that's not right. No, so that's yes. I mean, look, right. No. They just want to know exactly why do you have to give any title.
If the husband rents it out further, what happens?
Well, that we spoke about in Lamed Aleph. If right, the husband when he has nichsi peres, the kinya peres kinya guftami, is he considered like the bailim? Which he has the rights to lend it out. The question is, Taisa says that he needs the wife's permission. But really, this comes down to halachas of shmira. If you're using something's item, l'chayra on some level you have an obligation to be shomer. And the question is, what level of shmira do you have? So even it's just like the chiv of shmira. So really, the truth is, the Gemara comes out not like any one of them. Amar Ravi says, "Baal the husband, loy shoyel hava v'loy serch hava." So something you have to understand that people somebody trip you up and they ask you questions. They say, "Well, is it this or that?" And you're trying to figure out which one of the two. You have to have lateral thinking sometimes and say, "Well, it's actually neither one of the two of them. It's not shoyel, not serch elokei hava." Actually, the husband has the halachic status as a buyer, and therefore he's going to be pater because he never took any responsibility of shmira. As a guy who buys is not taking any responsibility, it's mine. And Taisus actually says, the Re says, he actually is like a shem mechinam. And he would be chayiv on the peshia. So that's what the Re says. And therefore, actually, he says, based on that, if someone purchases an animal for 30 days, even though he's not a shoyel and not a seicher, because it was with a lashon of a mekach, but however, he's still considered as a shem mechinam. The fact that you bought something for a limited time, even though it was a purchase, and I'm not accepting in shmira, but it's still going back to the original owner at some point, which that's really what Nixon Milk is going to go back to. At least a shem mechinam, at least that status that you shouldn't be negligent. Taisa says you would be liable for that also. But the question we asked is irrelevant because you're not a shol, not a seicher, because min reisa b'chanina. Where do we find that the husband's lekeach? Tamar reisa b'chanina says b'usha eskinu. In Usha they instituted. So the woman sold off her nichsi milog in her husband's lifetime, umeisa, and then she died, so her husband biblically inherits her. The halacha is habal meitzim yad al-kuchas. The husband could remove it from the people who bought it from her during their lifetime. So obviously, because really the woman has no permission to sell. Why not? Because he's the first loikeach. The second he married her, he becomes lekeach. This discusses why he really considering lekeach, really consider her a yerish bakapanim. He's a buyer, and hence I'm not a shomer. I'm not a shomer sacher. I'm not a seicher. I'm not a shoyel, and therefore, again, the question would be irrelevant. According to Taisa, there is relevancy somewhat, at least regarding a shemechinam, regarding pshia. But al kapanim, the question that we asked of agribi ihi parama alma v'hada nasba, which wanted to know, and then it dies. Would you be chayv as a shayel or are you a seicher? You're not a shayel, not a seicher. Maybe you're a shemechinam, but again, that question would be irrelevant. Now the Gemara continues with other questions on the same theme of boy ramba b'chama balba nichse ishtay, a husband and his wife's assets. So, for example, let's say after the husband and wife were married, let's say 10 years, his father-in-law passed away. So his wife inherits her father's assets. Now, in the assets, the father had also money of hektish, but no one knew it was hektish money. The Rabbanan had said that the husband gets the rights in all the assets of his wife to utilize and to eat the peiros. So essentially what happens, interestingly, incidentally, is that through this takana, the husband now became in control of the nichse hektish to acquire them. So the Gemara assumes by getting married, you just took hektish money and you transferred it to the husband's account. So even though it's still bundled and wherever we're staying in the father-in-law's desk drawer, his hektish money, since no one knows about it, there's me'ila that's being committed because it's going to the husband. That's the Gemara's going to discuss this type of question, like he doesn't know, doesn't want. But the Gemara's assuming that there's me'ila. And the question, mimal, who committed the me'ila? Who done it over here? Who's liable over here? Some Rabbi says, man limel. Who should we be holding liable for this? We can't incriminate anyone. Limel bal, to say that the husband committed me'ilah, and as Rashi explains, because the wife didn't give it to him, it happened on its own. from when her father passed away. So you can't blame the wife. So the husband's committed me'ila, but that's not true. He only wants to acquire what's permitted. He doesn't acquire what's forbidden. So he's not willing to accept that. So even though, like Tais explains, maybe you'd say the husband's the most guilty party because he's marrying the woman, he's giving her the ring. So he did the action that caused it all that. But I don't want what's prohibited. Okay, so we're going to say Timel Ihi. Maybe the wife should be committing me'ila, like Tais says, because she accepted the kedushin. No. She doesn't even want what's even permitted for him to acquire. She's forced by Takaz Chacham that the husband gets it. You can't say that she's doing the me'ila. She doesn't want the whole thing at all, that he acquires anything. So what are you going to say? Nimlu Bezdin. And maybe the courts of the Jewish people in that generation that institutes these halachas, it's through their purview that the tzibur has to follow the laws of the rabbis. It's as if they instituted that the husband gets this kinyan. Comes out, they were the ones who makna the nechsi hektish to the husband and caused it to go out to chulin, and therefore the rabbis should get punished. They committed the me'ila. Says, you want to know, Ki Abdu Rabban Tekanta. When did the rabbi say institution Amr Baal Lekech, and they said the husband is considered, so to speak, the buyer the moment he gets married? That's letter. That's what's permitted, at least. What's forbidden, they never made such a takana. So the Gemara says, Elam Rabbi, you're right. When it's still bundled and it's still, let's say, in the father-in-law's desk drawer, the husband didn't acquire it. It's not going out to be chulin, and no one committed me'ila yet. Rather, Baal Mal Lekesha. The husband commits me'ila when he goes to his father-in-law's house. His father-in-law passed away. It's after the shiva. He's starting to look through everything to see what's any valuable here. He finds a nice bundle of money. He's like, I could use this for my new car. The moment he goes and he spends that money, that's when he commits me'ila. Like anyone that takes hektar's money and uses it for chulin, that's the moment when me'ila is going to happen. Now, going back to the halacha of a shayil, regarding to the liability of a shayil, so the Gemara says the following question. Kichish basar machmas malacha. If, let's say, the animal, the meat, the flesh of the animal gets weakened because of the work, he was pounding the animal with schlepping rocks all day. Now the animal's meat got weakened. What's the halacha? Would you say that the shoyl who's chayiv in oitzi would be chayiv in that? So one of the rabbis said, and Rav Chilke Bereid Rav Avi Shmei, his name was Rav Chilke Bereid Rav Avi, he says, wait a second. From your question, Mechlal, you could infer the chimesa machmas malacha. You're asking if it gets weakened, but the inference is if it died because of the work, then mechayev, then for sure you'd be liable, because that's a bigger weakening, obviously. But why? Shouldn't you say lav lo'okma bechilta shilta? I didn't borrow it to keep it locked up in a cage. This was part of what I was borrowing it for. Yeah. So Elam Rava, and this is actually the source of the halacha. It's not brought in the pasuk anywhere. I don't have to tell you that if it got weakened because of the work that you're doing, you're going to be pater. That's inherent in the loan. Even if it dies because of the work that you're doing with, Mr. Shoy, have no leinsin, no, you're going to be pater. Why? Because Amalei tells him, I didn't borrow it to keep it locked in the drawer. Inherently in a loan is the fact that I'm doing the work with it. And if the work did it, then that's not my liability. And that's where it's all a svara, this halacha that we know of einsin, that you can be pater of Mesa Machmas Malacha by the shayl. Now the Gemara brings a story. Ahu Gabba the Shol Narga Machabri. A certain person borrowed an axe from his friend, and it first broke. Also came the Rava came in front of Rava. Amalei said, okay, Zilai Sisahad, you have to bring witnesses, the Lav Shanas, that you didn't deviate from the work. If you'll be pater, because an axe that breaks, that's part of the work. An axe can break when you're chopping down a tree. That's Mesa Machmas Malacha, but you just got to bring witnesses that you didn't do something abnormal. If there's something abnormal, it's not the way you're supposed to use it, then you're going to be chayiv. Now, says what's halacha if there's no witnesses? Says Matashma, it's being a raya because we have a story that who gavra the shol narga mechabri ve'itfer. Certain person borrowed an axe from his friend and it broke because the borrower was negligent. Now, so come to the Rav, came from the Rav. Amalei says, okay, zil shalom le'narga ma'al. You have to pay a full-fledged axe, which is if you don't have witnesses, you might be negligent, as the story was he was negligent, so you got to pay an axe. Now, what we see over here, it's got to be a narga ma'alya, has to be a full-fledged axe. On that, Amalei Rav Kahana, Rav As Rav, they says, wait a second, it's design min aleph. Dina hachi, is that really the halacha that he has to pay him a brand new axe? He's got to go to Home Depot? But the Brisa teaches in Baba Kam Dabiyum Beis by the halacha of damages, what's called tashlume nezik. which is the halacha that we know of Baila Metablim Benavela, which is, let's say an animal died in your pit or your ox gored it. The halacha is we evaluate how much the dead animal is worth through the damaging that this damaging party caused, and then you supplement the difference of how much it got lessened, and that's how much you pay. Teiroso, why don't you just evaluate how much is the pieces of the broken axe worth, and then you add on that value, and then let the owner go put in the effort of changing that up and getting a new axe. Why are you saying that he has to give back a brand new axe? So B'shas Rav was quiet. And the Gemara actually says, you're right, the halacha is not like him. He gives him back his broken pieces, and he supplements for the value of the axe. Now, Taisus on the bottom of Zil Shalom, he brings Rashi's Pshat, and he says, Rabbeinu Shmuel doesn't like this because it doesn't make sense. Even a gan of a gazlan, it sounds like you could always pay with ever, subin, brand, just like a mazik. So, anochab, why are you saying that you have to give back a brand new axe? It wouldn't make sense because even if you hold that it doesn't have the halacha like a mazik that you just supplement, but you could pay anything anyway. So I could just pay the broken pieces. I could use that as payment. And then I could pay with money, whatever it is. So why are you telling me I have to give him back a brand new axe? So rather, Rabbeinu Shmuel explains, we're talking about where what's called the pchas nevela. We're talking about where if it went down in value, that's what we're discussing. Whose liability is that? Rav Kana Rav Asi was saying that the broken pieces are in the rishus of the mashal. The shoil is not like a gazlan, which the gazlan totally acquires it. And regarding that point, that's relevant. And then he brings from the Rivam, which actually adds and says, no, even if it doesn't go down the value, very interestingly, the difference between Rav and Rav Kahana and Rav Asi would be that when you have the broken pieces, of course you can pay whatever you want. But the question is, do we teach him to pay the broken piece or not? If you hold that it's the marshal's, say, it's his, give it to him. But if not, we don't tell him to pay up with broken pieces because it's yours. Yeah, if you want, you could, but we wouldn't teach him that. That's the difference between the two divisions. In fact, at any time for hosting us.